Hello, everyone. The U.S. neoliberal financial system will no longer exist within the next decade. This is not an exaggeration or wishful thinking, but a pure fact of the matter. There is no chance of the survival of the U.S. dollar in its current stage, except to be used as toilet paper, perhaps as a napkin, or fuel for fire. If the present trend continues, the only protection the dollar may receive in the future is as an artifact of the past in a museum. The global majority are already moving towards a new economic model, one that works in the interests and well-being of all nations. This is the situation that the late Lyndon LaRouche, American statesman, economist, patriot, and founder of this organization, has forecasted since the 60s, when he made his first economic forecast that we would face financial fallout in the early 70s, after Nixon's breakaway from the Bretton Woods system of fixed exchange rates, and we saw exactly that in 1971. Under Bretton Woods, cheap credit had been made available for productive investment, and there was, for the most part, genuine economic growth, despite some crucial flaws in the system, introduced against FDR's original intention. This growth came to a screeching halt with the end of the fixed exchange rate system. Suddenly, developing nations became the playground for the ultra-wealthy financial speculators, who flooded these developing nations with credit aimed not at infrastructure development, but at trapping these nations in a vicious circle of ever-increasing indebtedness. As the result of the same policies, the U.S. physical economy began to contract. Since 1971, there has been no economic growth in the United States. The magnitude of collapse has been covered up by the fact that there has been no investment in merely replenishing dilapidated infrastructure. This is a statement that the LaRouche organization has been vocal about every financial crisis which has been occurring each decade. We cannot continue to revive the neoliberal financial system bailout by bailout. It is time to move on to the new economic paradigm. We first saw the beginnings of this new system with the development of non-bloc economic unions outside of the current NATO and G7 aligned nations, including the BRICS Alliance, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and the Eurasian Economic Union. These unions have been founded upon the commitment of each nation to uplifting their physical economy and infrastructure development, which were further unified through the inauguration of China's Belt and Road Initiative in 2013. The growth of the Global South became the foundation of the new paradigm, which we see moving forward today. Since the beginning of the so-called Ukraine-Russia war, which is really the Russia-NATO-American war, and the sanctions imposed upon Russia as a result, the new economic paradigm has accelerated to new heights, while the neoliberal paradigm keeps digging itself deeper into its own grave. The sanctions that were set to impose upon the Russian economy backfired and sent the Russian ruble to the highest valuation that we have seen in years, while NATO nations experience hyperinflation in energy costs, food, prices, and more. By August 2022, the Chinese yuan became the most traded currency on the Russian stock market for the first time ever, pushing out the euro and US dollar. This milestone ignited other efforts from other nations to decouple from the US dollar. By September 2022, the Russian state announced that all further transactions of Russian oil and gas would be conducted in either the ruble or the yuan based on their trade agreement with China. As a result, Russia began buying up the Chinese yuan on the foreign exchange market, given their projected oil and gas revenues going into 2023, and conducting further trade with other countries in their own national currencies. From this new development in economic trade, other countries expressed interest in weaning off the dollar, such as Saudi Arabia, Egypt, India, Indonesia, and Nigeria. To understand how quickly things are changing in the global economy, let's take a look at the developments of just the past week since Xi and Putin's meeting in Moscow, where they announced to the world that global economic cooperation and development would be the future of trade. Since these remarks, Many countries in the global south have gained the confidence to pursue this new economic paradigm, win-win trade, that is not based on dollar hegemony. Tuesday, the Shanghai Petroleum and Natural Gas Exchange announced that it completed its first yuan-settled trade for liquid natural gas between China's National Offshore Oil Corporation and France's Total Energies. According to the exchange, 65,000 tons of LNG imported from the UAE changed hands. Yesterday, Brazil and China just completed talks to strike a trade agreement to trade in their own national currencies. Since China is Brazil's largest trading partner, with a record $150.5 billion in bilateral trade last year, this will enable China to conduct their deals directly with Brazil without going through the dollar. China has also made similar deals with Russia, Pakistan, Iran, and others, to name a few. At the same time, ASEAN finance ministers and central bank governors are meeting in Indonesia to discuss ways to reduce dependence on the US dollar, euro, yen, and British pound sterling. The members of the board are hoping to expand upon an ASEAN cross-border digital payment system that would be extended to allow more ASEAN states to use local currencies for trade. An agreement on such cooperation was reached between Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, the Philippines, and Thailand in November 2022. This follows from a statement made by Indonesia's banking regulator on March 27th that the Bank of Indonesia is preparing to introduce its own domestic payment system. This development was a result of Indonesian President Joko Widodo's earlier statements in March to ditch Visa, MasterCard, and other foreign payment networks and start using credit cards issued by domestic banks. This is to be done to shield any transactions from possible geopolitical fallout that could disrupt economic transactions. Quote, a decision by ASEAN to disengage from the West's currencies, and especially the US dollar and Japanese yen, will put pressure on Tokyo, especially as to where its future trade alignments are, with the United States or with Asia. This is a quote from Chris Devonshire Ellis, who wrote in the ASEAN briefing on March 29th. That is the essence of the crossroads that we face here in America. Will we continue digging ourselves further into the grave, or join together with the global majority into the new economic paradigm that respects the national sovereignty of each nation with the commitment towards economic development and growth for all? The only way out of this de-dollarization crisis that we are witnessing is to work with China and other nations to expand the Belt and Road Initiative into the World Land Bridge. This is the only chance we have for survival as a country. This is Kynan Thistlethwaite with the LaRouche organization. I'll see you again soon.